Oh, good evening, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Antinanco and United Turtle Island United with PAZA and Antinanco, and I'm one of our friends, another co-host, Arzu. Welcome back. And
Hello,
tonight
everyone.
we're having the wonderful brothers and sisters from way over there, somewhere in the Black Hills, for, the location part, but it's okay. That's how we natives do because we come from the stars, so we kind of zoom, you know. That's all good. So welcome, Linda.
Not in the
Uh,
Black Hills.
so yeah, I'm so happy to have you guys on. I haven't talked to you guys in such a long time since Standing Rock per se, but yes. So yeah, tonight's episode is talk about food sovereignty, traditional medicines, and tonight they're gonna share their wonderful medicines, everything that we're all kind of coexisting with our coming back to our roots of our nations and our people and our soul, our spirit, back into our mother, to Mother Earth, Uju Maka, to Ina,
Mm.
or the
Uh,
Wankan, into that sacred path of those things, what we call medicines. So tonight, I hope everybody enjoys, and let's begin. Here you go, Oka.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. We're so happy and honored to be on here today with our friends and our bro. And yeah, we really are. We were hiking in the Black Hills today. The Black Elks were in the Black Hills, um, hiking and having a good time. We were trying to see what plants might be coming up. And like even now, not even April yet, we saw a lot of medicines already coming up, even some stuff peeping up through the snow. So that made our hearts really feel good. And yeah, we left our hike and we had no signal out there. And so we left that so that we could come here and visit with you guys for a while and just talk about some of the work that we do. I know it sounds weird that we're going to talk about these food kits that we make for elders, but really these food kits exemplify our views on food sovereignty, traditional foods. And so you'll see in some of the pictures we're going to share, but I'm Linda Black Elk. I teach food sovereignty at United Tribes Technical College, which is the tribal university up in Bismarck, North Dakota. I teach food sovereignty and ethnobotany, and this is my husband.
Hi, I'm Luke Black Elk. My family and I, we have a nonprofit called Tatanka Wakbala Model Sustainable Community, and we come from Cheyenne River, and food sovereignty and helping people is just kind of what we do.
Yeah. And we really we're into all aspects of that. So like for example, right now we're planning the Earth Lodge that we're going to be living in with our family, with our children. We're planning on we're locating the site where we're going to build that on the Cheyenne River Reservation. And almost all of the meals we eat on a daily basis have foods that we've either grown or ourselves or foraged ourselves or gathered. We love traditional foods and medicines. It's my 17-year-old was saying to us the other day, like, gosh, I don't know how many times we might have ended up in the hospital or might have ended up going to the doctor if it hadn't been for our traditional medicines. They really are an everyday part of our lives. So the slide you're looking at here, what we really like one of the things that we are really interested in is sharing food, like reconnecting food, traditional food networks and trade routes, and going all over. Like, we have friends that we get maple syrup from up in Wisconsin and Michigan. We have friends that we get wild rice from up in Minnesota. We have friends we get beans from down in the Southwest. And we have friends that we get seaweed and kelp and all that stuff from up on the Northwest coast. We really believe in that food sharing and food trading. And so actually, since COVID started, we've been making really amazing traditional food kits for elders, and everything in these food kits has traditional aspects. We have some other stuff in there too, but it's shelf stable, organic, healthy, safe.
And so we're also putting in a lot of traditional medicines into these kits. You can see on the slide here, we have some chaga in the middle, and then some tea blends and some of the other medicines that we put in there. And we're trying to get people to realize that you don't have to go to a doctor to heal everything that's wrong with your body. Some of these things, the Mother Earth has provided these things for us for thousands of years, and we have stepped away from that.
Right.
And it's time for us to start walking back towards those natural medicines. And a lot of times, these natural medicines, when they're used in the correct way, they don't have the same negative side effects that a lot of pharmaceutical drugs have.
Right. Yeah. So like in the center there, that's a beautiful grinding stone and crushing stone that our friend Andrew St. Pierre made for us. And we love chaga. But something else that we also love to talk about is, what are common alternatives? Because things like chaga can actually be easily over harvested and overused. And so we really love to talk about, hey, if you're not Indigenous, you might want to consider some alternatives so that Indigenous foods, Indigenous medicines are left there for Indigenous people. And that's not to say, we share food and medicine with everybody, but there are like really wonderful alternatives. Like, for example, for chaga, reishi mushroom is a very common alternative. Maitake mushrooms are a very common alternative. So why not say, hey, Indigenous people need chaga for ceremonies as well as for medicine. So why don't we respect that enough to let it rest for a while? And if we happen to be gifted some chaga, great, but we have other alternatives. And then of course, on the right-hand side, you can see one of our tea blends. We make the most amazing tea blends that we give out to everybody and that we've handed out even beyond COVID. But I'm happy to share some of our tea recipes with you. That's just kind of to show some of our teas. Was there a question?
So another one of the things that we're really trying to get people to realize that a part of food sovereignty is growing your own food. And you can see on the right side, that's actually, we were in a very, very small apartment, and we had this maybe 3 foot by 8 foot balcony. And we grew as many green things as we could on there. And it's hard, it's difficult to grow in the pots and stuff like that. And you don't get to grow as much, and it's not quite as much fun as going through your garden and seeing all the things. But we were still able to produce a lot of food from a small space.
Yeah. And I mean, that, like he said, that was maybe I don't even think it was 8 feet. I think it was like 3 by 6, that balcony, because we were in a really tiny apartment for a while. And the thing is for me, I've never gone a single year in my life without growing food ever in my life. And so it's really important to me to always be doing that, to always be growing food and sharing food with people. And so even though we had such a tiny space, we made the most of it, and we grew beans and peas and tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. If you look down on the bottom of that right-hand picture, that's an old foil turkey roasting pan. That was like 50 cents in the grocery store, but we put cilantro in there and all kinds of herbs that we were growing in a turkey roasting pan. Arugula, we were growing arugula in that, and so something to always remember is that growing food in this economy, in this world, growing your own food is an act of resistance, and it's one that we all need to be taking part in. The agricultural industrial complex, I guess you could call it, does not want us growing our own food because they don't make money off of it. And they certainly don't want us growing our own medicine. If you look in that white 5-gallon bucket on the right-hand side there, that's actually turmeric. We're in North Dakota. We are growing our own turmeric. We got a turmeric root in Hawaii from some of our Kanaka friends, and we planted part of it in a bucket, and we've been growing turmeric ourselves. So we believe that food should be taken out of the capitalist chain, right? Like why is it that people have to pay so much for food? Why is it that there are hungry people? Isn't that just such a weird concept? Like, shouldn't food be one of those things that everyone has enough of? And if we were all growing our food and sharing, everyone would.
And why do we have such an obsession with having these very short green lawns, you know, instead of having food forests in our front yards. One of the things that we always see when we go around and do workshops with children is that when you ask kids, where does a salad come from? They will inevitably say the store, the grocery store,
Yep.
you know, and they when we take them on plant walks, they'll actually kind of freak out because we'll be eating and just kind of grazing as we go along on different wild plants. And they're like, how could you eat that? It's so dirty. And we're like, what makes you think that this is dirtier than the stuff you're getting in the grocery store? Right. You know, at least we know this doesn't have a bunch of chemicals or fertilizers on it. And you don't know where the fertilizers are coming from, you know?
Yeah, we were actually working with some young kids yesterday in South Dakota at Marty Indian School. And I was eating dandelion leaves right in front of them. And I couldn't believe the dandelions are already popping up in South Dakota. It's pretty early. But yeah, some of those kids were absolutely freaking out that I was eating dandelions. And, you know, for us, dandelions are food, like, and medicine, like they're just an everyday part of our lives. And the same thing for our kids. And, you know, something I always say to those kids is like, you know, what is it about us that makes us trust a plastic bag full of chopped iceberg lettuce from the grocery store, but we don't trust these beautiful foods that are growing wild and, you know, have all of this gorgeous rainwater and things like that feeding them. It's really, you know, something that we have to think about are our trust issues with traditional food. And if there's any questions as we go along, Dylan or Olga, yeah, anybody, feel free to let us know. But just a little more about sharing food. Like on the left there, those are gete okosamen or Miami squash. And they're like so delicious. But that's my friend Rosebud. She's an indigenous chef. She's Ojibwe. And she actually brought us some of those and we traded her for beans and all kinds of stuff. So at the end of the day, we both had beans and we both had squash. Right. So, I mean, you know, we grow the beans, she grows the squash, and it's a great trade. And then, of course, on the right there is my friend, Chef Brian Yazzie. We were able to take a bunch of buffalo meat out to him. And of course, you know, he's always willing to trade for that even. So another really important aspect to food sovereignty is food preservation. And I'm telling you, in our house, if you give us something, we will either pickle it or dry it. Like we are absolutely, or ferment it. I mean, we are obsessed with food preservation. So these are a couple of things that we do. These are actually, this is both the same plant.
So on the left-hand slide picture, you'll actually see dried watermelon. And we were just absolutely flabbergasted when someone said, you can dry watermelon. We're like, no, you can't dry watermelon. There's no way you can dry watermelon. And then we tried it and it worked. It was amazing to us. And it tastes like watermelon taffy. It's just one of the greatest things we've ever tasted. All the sugar is just so condensed down and it's like a paper thin piece of watermelon, but it's so delicious. So much flavor packed in there. And then on the right-hand side, there's some pictures of pickled watermelon rind, because we're also trying to produce as little waste as we can. So this is a way for, even after you've pickled or dried the inside of your watermelon, you can actually eat the outside still too. And it, Linda loves it.
Yeah. Oh, watermelon. Yeah. He's not as into the watermelon rind pickles as I am. They're very tart and they have a lot of spice, but they're fantastic. Like with some chicken, watermelon rind pickles and chicken are absolutely amazing. So I see the question about how do you dry watermelon? And I want to tell you guys this. Once you dry watermelon, you will it's going to blow your mind. And I'll tell you how to do that in just one second. But let me say that a lot of store-bought watermelons these days, and this is going to freak some of you out, but it's the truth. A lot of store-bought watermelons these days are actually dyed with red food dye. And the reason for that is because they pick them before they're ripe, and they actually are able to inject dye into them. And the reason we found that out is because two of our children, we have 3 sons, and 2 of our children are very allergic to red dye. It creates this horrible rash around their mouth and all over their chest when they eat watermelon. And that's how we found out about red dye being used in watermelon. So instead we grow our own and then we preserve it for the winter, because I mean, plus you guys know, if you've ever tried to buy a watermelon in January in North Dakota or anywhere in the northern US, it's gross. It has no flavor. And so this is a way to preserve that beautiful watermelon flavor all year long.
It tastes like summer.
It tastes like summer. It's amazing. So all we do is we just take the watermelons and we slice them to about a half an inch thick. And then we lay those slices in our dehydrator and we just let them dehydrate. It takes a while. It takes probably about 18 hours for watermelon to dry fully. But once you do that, you have it forever. I mean, we just put it in paper bags or plastic bags or wherever, and then we store it in our pantry. And you know, you can, like, if your kids ever want like fruit leather, you know, this is better than fruit leather. It's just so amazing, and you can still cook with it. So like if you wanted to make like a beautiful watermelon beverage in the middle of winter that tastes like summer, you can do that. But it's really that simple. Just slice it to about half an inch thick and put it in your dehydrator. If you have a temperature setting on your dehydrator, it's about 135 for about 18 hours. And it's well worth it to preserve that flavor. And even the texture of it's fantastic. So, oh, and I have recipes for watermelon rind pickles. Do not waste the rind. It's delicious. And it makes the perfect pickle. And it's super nutritious as well. So like I said, we preserve everything, and it doesn't just have to be stuff that you've grown in the garden, like your watermelon. We have apple trees, and I mean, I don't know what your neighbors are like, but we have a neighbor who says, come pick all the apples you want. And, you know, they mean it because they have, like apples are just falling on the ground. And we're really lucky. We go and we collect all of their apples, and we make all kinds of things from their apples. So we make applesauce, of course. And, you know, you can dry apples as well. We make apple chips. We make, you can make with your leftover rinds and peels, you can make your own apple cider vinegar. You don't have to waste any of that. You can use all of the apple. And then on the right-hand side is actually one of our kids' favorite snacks.
So bananas are one of the easiest things to dry. It takes about 2-3 hours to dry them in a dehydrator, and they're super cheap. I mean, you can sometimes pick up bananas for 49 cents a pound, right? And so it's super simple. You just slice them thin, put them in there, and then your kids have a delicious, nutritious snack. And I mean, we can barely keep them in the house for any amount of time before our kids eat them all up.
Yeah. And like, here's the crazy thing. Well, first of all, you can dry bananas like just out on some paper towels. If you live in a dry climate like we do, but it takes a lot longer. So it's really easy to do in your dehydrator. And everyone thinks that you have to process them in some way. Everyone thinks, oh, wait a minute, do you soak them in lemon juice first? Do you know, what do you do to the bananas? You don't do anything. You literally slice them and dry them. And so if you don't like banana chips that you get in the store, the reason for that is because, well, they're gross. And a lot of them are processed in a weird way, and they have all kinds of preservatives on them. Homemade banana chips are fantastic. And so I see Robin is asking about our favorite dehydrator. We use the cheapest model. It's a Presto, or Presto or Presto.
Something like that.
Whatever that is. It's like, you know, like a Walmart brand or something that cost about $20. And we've had it for 10 years and it's never failed us. So, and I mean, we have another one that someone gifted us, and it was a more expensive one, but we always recommend the inexpensive one because it's awesome. So
where's Luca? I don't see Luca. Where they should be in.
I'm taking the picture.
Oh, you're taking a picture. Oh.
No one wants to see his face. Come on.
Oh gosh.
So this is a really, really old school way of preserving squash. This is a old Lakota way, and this is actually a summer squash. This is a zucchini.
Yeah, and I mean, like, how many of you guys have thought about like drying zucchini? You know, like I think a lot of people dry winter squash. That's become a lot more popular. And drying winter squash, if you haven't, okay, let me first say this. If you've never dried your winter squashes, like your delicatas and like your Hubbard squashes and your Lakota squashes, those big winter squash, when you cook with dried squash, the squash melts into the broth and it makes this gorgeous silky broth for all your soups. I mean, and it's just so flavorful and fantastic. So like if you've never dried squash and then cooked with it, it should be a goal of yours for the next season because it is amazing. And another thing that we love to do is dry our summer squashes, whether we're talking about the yellow zucchini, the yellow crooknecks, the green zucchini. You know, everyone jokes about everyone leaving their zucchinis on your porch during the season. And, you know, oh my God, what am I going to do with all this zucchini, right? We always say, give it to us because we spiralize it. Like you see in the picture that was just done with a knife. We literally just spin it and spiralize the zucchini. And then we hang it up to dry. We put a rope through it or a stick and we just hang it up until it's dried. And yeah, it's amazing. And you can put that in any super stew. You can make a dried zucchini gratin if you want, you know, with some cheese and cream and ham and stuff like that. But absolutely delicious and amazing. I'm sorry, I couldn't see that comment fast enough. So this is actually, Delwyn probably recognizes these.
This is a traditional method of drying chokecherries. And if you actually look at the patties on the right, you'll see we leave the seeds in. Leaving the seeds in and actually crushing the seeds when you do it is a big part of making these a medicine. Well, a lot of what Linda and I do, we don't just look for medicines to take at different times. We eat our medicines all the time. That's, you know, it's a big part of being a sovereign person is some of these foods are the medicines that your body needs, you know, and a lot of the fast foods and a lot of the food you're getting in the stores and stuff, they've had all the medicine taken out. So with these ones, we leave the pits in because there's a lot of micronutrients and macronutrients inside the seed pits, and there is that. If you read about chokecherries, you'll hear people saying that they're poisonous. There is a slight amount of cyanide inside the seed pits, but when you crush them, it off gases, and you don't ever have to worry about that again. It dissipates into the air. If you're really worried about it, make sure that when you're crushing them, you're maybe outside or in a well-ventilated area. But we've done it inside, right in our table, and never had a problem with it.
Yeah. And so like a lot of people, you know, and you guys might have seen that too. So what he was saying is there are numerous food guides, edible wild plants, you know, some of those food, you know, edible wild plant guides or whatever, and they will actually say that chokecherries are poisonous. And of course, all of our native friends laugh at that because we've been eating chokecherries our entire lives. And, you know, we know that chokecherries aren't poisonous, but there is some truth in the fact that chokecherries and any pitted fruits like plums and peaches and, you know, etc., do have cyanogenic or cyanide compounds in the pits, you know, inside the stone or the seed. And so, you know, I think people were perplexed many years ago when settlers first came and they were like, wait a minute, how is it that you guys eat the pits? Because we literally eat the pits, right? And you know, I ask my students sometimes, I'll say, do you guys know why Indigenous people are able to eat chokecherry pits? And they'll say, oh, maybe we built up a resistance to cyanide. No. No.
Wow, no.
Don't test that. You are not resistant to cyanide. It's like Luke was saying, the acidity of the fruit juice will break the bond, I guess. I can't remember what the cyanide is bonded to, but it dissipates as a gas. And you're left with all the nutrients. Like when you talk to elders, they'll tell you all the medicine is in the pits. That's where all the micronutrients are. That's where the proteins are. That's where the complex carbohydrates are. So those are dried chokecherry patties on the right hand side. It's kind of fun. Traditionally, when you grind chokecherries, you do it with a big stone on a big stone slab, and you make them into a paste, and then you make them into like these hamburger sized patties, and you let them dry in the sun. But last fall we kind of got lazy. We decided to use our Ninja. we stuck those chokecherries into our Ninja blender, and it did a great job. We were sitting there grinding chokecherries. We were really worried about the blade on the Ninja, but it worked great. And we were like, hey, but what we always say is you have to know. We still make our kids use the grinding stone because we say you have to know how to do it. It's important to know how to do it. And you can do this with any of those pitted fruits. Like on the left, those are actually some freshly made wild plum patties. And so in the wintertime, what we'll do is we'll mix these dried fruits, like our dried plums and our dried chokecherries. We'll mix them with dried meat and fat to make a dish known by Lakotas as wasna. WASNA, wasna. In other communities, Ojibwe communities, I think you'll hear it called pemmican. And it is literally the world's perfect food. Okay. Those dried berries, the dried meat, and the fat, that is what has sustained indigenous people for thousands of years. And that wasna, you can take that hiking with you. It'll last forever. It's lightweight, portable, and it has everything you need in it. These days, you can actually get wasna sold by a Lakota family from Pine Ridge, the Tilson family. They sell
Tonka bars. So if you've ever seen Tonka bars, that's basically just a traditional method of food preservation. And you'll see actually that we move from gardens to wild foods.
Yes.
And a part of food sovereignty, a part of what we're learning about food sovereignty is that it's not just about growing your own food and producing your own food within your home. It's also about realizing what bounty Unchimaka, the Mother Earth, has provided for us. There is so much out there for us, and if we can find good places to pick those things and do it in a good way, that's one of the main things, is always doing it in a good way.
Yep. And so we even dry meat. Okay.
Oh, that looks so beautiful. That looks awesome right there.
Woo, yeah, isn't that awesome? So that's all buffalo. That's buffalo.
Where do you live now again? You said where?
we ain't telling you, bro.
We'll be over. I'll find out. You got Tatanka. I'm coming over.
So one of the crazy things about this is that people often think that in order to dry meat, you have to either smoke it or salt it or do something to it to preserve it. And what we've done for thousands of years, our people, is just cut it thin and leave it out to dry.
Air dry it.
Yeah.
That is literally like what you see in the basket on the left is just air dried meat. That's all it is. And we have people say, oh gosh, why don't you salt it or season it or whatever? This is not beef jerky, y'all. We're not making beef jerky. We are making, we're preserving meat. Like what you see in the center photo there, that is a super traditional soup. It's my husband's absolute most favorite soup. Anytime I'm in trouble, that's what I make. and I'll let him tell you about all the stuff in it because it's amazing. But the dried meat, that is the primary component in that soup, and it's delicious. And here's the thing: if you salt the meat or season it beforehand, it's gonna make your soup taste funny. And so you want to just leave it as plain as possible so that it'll have even more applications. But even just dried meat, sometimes oh my God. So my sister, Lisa Ironclad, she one day she was taking dried meat, just big pieces of dried meat, and she was dipping it in buffalo fat and eating it like that. And I was like, oh, can that be good? Like, oh my God. So then we started doing it, only we didn't dip ours in buffalo fat. We were shoveling up bacon grease and eating dried meat covered in bacon grease, and it was freaking delicious, let me tell you. But yeah, so that dried meat soup in the center,
so that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
in the center
I'm just
actually
I'm trying to
has-
put that in my mind. I'm like, what the? Okay. Woo! All right.
So we make what we call, and this is just what we call it medicine soup, because
Yes.
that soup has everything that you need. You know, that'll give you all the nutrition, all the energy, all the good spiritual feelings that you need from that soup, because it has dried meat, it has dried wild, what we call wild turnip, or they call it wild breadroot. We call it timsala. It has dried corn and dried hominy. The dried squash you saw earlier, we put that in there. Actually, when we put the dried summer squash in there, my mom thought we had put bacon in there. It was just amazing. But that soup there, that will keep you going all day long.
All day.
And just, there's nothing quite as filling as that soup there.
Yeah. So
Oh.
that soup, we can talk in more detail about what's in there. But one of the primary components is dried meat. And so Lakotas call that bapa soup. Bapa is that word for dried meat. And that's bapa wahampi, dried meat soup. And yeah. Oh, and you can also see the little wild onions in there. So we see that Cimbria is asking where we store our dried vegetables, like our dried plants.
So this is we have pillowcases, pillowcases full of things, different dried vegetables, and we actually put the dried meat into, and you know, it's one of the best because you just need a little bit of airflow and you keep it somewhere where it's dry, and it will, like Linda was saying earlier, when you dry things, they will last forever. We've actually had friends who have been at archaeological digs where they've unearthed old caches, and the old caches are so well preserved that they still have the dried food in there, and it's still edible, you know, hundreds of years later.
Yeah, dried corn. They've found dried corn, dried squash, and all of that that's still edible, you know, after decades, after 100 years. And so we store ours in pillowcases. I swear, bro, not the ones that he uses.
Not the ones that you
I hope not, because I'm like, holy, I don't know about that. Now that you guys you send it to the world. I don't know now. I don't want to trust it. No, just kidding. That's true medicine. That's true medicine. If it comes from their home, from the heart, that's really good. Because, you know, Karen, you know, Unchi, they're very well versed in that kind of, you know, medicine. The family's very it's home, you know, it's home.
Yes. Yep. So we do a lot more than just drying for preservation, and more than pickling. What you see there on the left, I mean, we do pickle. Those are pickled carrots on the left-hand side with some jalapeno in there. So delicious. But we also, like what you see in that jar on the right is dried kale and dried cabbage. And that's actually a big component in our medicine soups. You know, like if we don't necessarily feel like having a salad that night, because getting your greens is really important, we actually will put a handful, we'll put a handful of our dried kale and our dried cabbage into our soup, and it fortifies it, and it also tastes absolutely amazing. And something that Luke and I have found out, do you want to talk about the green soup? Like,
oh yeah, so when we go around and we try to talk to elders a lot, one of the things that we found is that, you know, we have this misconception a lot of times, especially because a lot of what we hear is from books, or a lot of what a lot of the knowledge we get is from books, that Indians only had meat and, you know, a little bit of this or that. When we've talked to the elders, they actually say that when they were eating their soups, they were almost green. The broth was almost green because of all the different fresh herbs and fresh green vegetables that they were putting in there. And if you think about it, it's the only way to do it. You know, it adds a whole whole new component to it. And when you have those fresh greens in there, or if you have some dried greens to put in there, it's a way to get more nutrition into your body.
Yes.
You know,
and Simbria was asking about foraging. Yes. So like we put nettles into our soup all the time. If any of you have had stinging nettles, with it, you know, we always think about them stinging, but with any cooking or drying, all the stinging effect goes away. So we put nettles into our soup. We put dandelion greens into our soup. We put any kind of forage green you can imagine into our soups, and they're so fantastic. But we also saw someone was asking about, their pickling and fermenting are two totally different food preservation methods.
And we do both.
We do both. Like, so for example, the watermelon rind and these carrots have been pickled. And that means that we have used vinegar to preserve them. Okay. When you pickle something, you use vinegar. When you ferment something, you do not use vinegar. You just use salt to start the fermentation process. And so if any of you have ever had sauerkraut, if any of you have ever had kimchi, which is one of our favorites. I'm part Asian, so I love kimchi. I mean, he when we first got together, he was super skeptical about kimchi, but now he commits the ultimate sin, bro. He puts kimchi into his bapa soup.
Oh,
I've been converted.
Oh, hookah.
But remember, so if you all are looking for ways to revitalize your gut microbiome, because of over decades, over generations of terrible processed foods, this goes for everybody, you know, whether you're indigenous or not, but especially people of color, whether you're Black or brown, you know, indigenous or Asian, our gut microbiomes have been colonized because of processed foods, because of the refined sugar, because of white flour, because of all of that. It's just crazy. And so if we want to really revitalize and decolonize our gut microbiome so that we have better digestion, better uptake of nutrients, we have to eat fermented foods. It really is a part of it. To me, it's an essential part of staying healthy, is to take care of our gut first. And so fermented foods are a really important part of that. And not pickled, but fermented. Because if you use vinegar to preserve something through pickling, it does not have the probiotics that fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi have. And even yogurt to an extent, although I'm not a huge fan of dairy because most of my family is lactose intolerant. So,
and if you get into more traditional foods, like Darwin and I have a traditional food that's called wojapi, and it's just different kinds of berries that are crushed up and cooked a little bit. But when we've actually started to look into the process of it, there is a slow fermentation process that's going through as we're eating it, and so we're getting some of that those probiotics into our system, and it's helping our gut biome.
Yeah. There's this weird thing where people think that indigenous people didn't have fermentation, but fermentation is absolutely a traditional. It's a traditional way of life. So like Ojibways have their maple vinegar that they've used, and that's sort of a fermented vinegar, fermented maple sap. And a lot of indigenous people have their fruit soups, I guess you could call it, or their fruit puddings. So like wojapi can be made with those dried chokecherry patties we were talking about earlier, just reconstituting those dried chokecherry patties in water. And you can dip all kinds of things in there. These days people dip fry bread, but we don't eat fry bread. Well, we tend not to eat fry bread.
We try really hard not to eat fry bread. But it's just those natural yeasts that are on the berries, and they're starting their process, and it's just a part of how the natural process works. And if we are a part of that natural process, then we're doing good for ourselves.
Yes, yeah. And so I saw something about saltwater brining. So if you brine in salt water or if you preserve in salt water, a lot of times that's going to ferment anyway, but it's a very slow and very mild fermentation. Yeah, preserving stuff in salt water is fantastic. So we do tons of foraging. So basically what we talked about is gardening, growing our own food, sharing food, renewing those trade networks. We also talked about, bananas. They're not traditional, but how many of you have bought bananas swearing that you were going to make banana bread with them, and they'll be hanging there all black and brown and they'll be all mushy, but you swear, no, don't throw them away, don't waste them, I swear I'm going to do something with them. Instead of letting that happen, just dry your bananas, and then it's about not having food waste. But now, we've talked about wild food preservation, and we've talked about gardened food preservation. We do a lot of foraging. So on the in the left-hand picture there, that's actually milkweed. Those are milkweed buds with some of the young leaves, and it is so delicious. Another, do you guys have a list of food goals? Because we love food so much that we have our list of food goals in our life of foods we're going to eat before we die, or foods we're going to forage, or foods we're going to cook before we die. Some people have their bucket list. We have our restaurant list and our food list. And milkweed is one of those dishes that should be on your list because it's so good. We eat the buds, we eat the leaves. Just last night, my sister made milkweed pods, the seed pods, and she stuffed them with meat, and with buffalo meat, and they were so delicious. She sort of made a stir fry with milkweed pods and buffalo meat. We love to put these flower buds into soup. On the right hand side, you might have heard us, and of course Delwyn, talking about tipsila. I know.
Love it. Yes, love it.
You're gonna really raid our house. In English, people call that prairie turnip or wild turnip. The scientific name, I don't know if anyone likes that. It's called Pediomelum esculentum. It's a member of the bean family, a legume, and it grows all over the prairie.
It's one of the food that has sustained the Lakota people for forever. We feel like it's just one of the things that you'll when you listen to some of our creation stories, there are creation stories that are all based around this plant, and you can preserve it. You can eat it fresh from the ground. That's one of my favorite ways to eat it. It's just right out of the ground, and you take the husk off, and it's just this white, fibrous, kind of starchy tuber, and it's just there's no other flavor like this. And so, like Linda was saying, if you have food goals, these are two of the things that you should put onto your food list of things that you should try.
Yes, and that tipsila, that was in the soup that we were talking about earlier, that bapa soup, that dried meat soup that I make for my husband. That's in there, and it's a really important component to that. And let me just say that if any of you have digestive issues, if you have Crohn's disease, if you have IBS, I have actually treated many people with digestive issues using tipsila, using that breadroot. We cook it up very slowly. We mash it up into a porridge, and then we have people eat about half a cup a day for a week or two. And we've actually been able to almost completely, like one of my friends, 12 years ago, she had her last Crohn's attack. She was down to 80 pounds when that happened, 80 pounds. And we gave her some tipsila to use, to eat, and told her how to do it. And she's been maintaining at about 120 pounds and is totally healthy. And she has not had an attack since then, a flare up of her Crohn's. So it's, just such a beautiful, okay. And let me, because I also forgot to say, milkweed is also wonderful for your digestion. And it's also really good for, if you have issues with ulcers, milkweed is wonderful for that. And so what we always love to talk about is think about the medicinal properties of the foods you're eating. think about that, because they all have some sort of medicinal property. If we're eating the foods that we're supposed to be eating, then we will not get sick. Okay. We will be much healthier people. And that's why we make medicine soup that we've talked about, earlier. That bapa wahampi, that dried meat soup, that's medicine soup, for more reasons than just what we've told you. We actually put a lot of medicines in there, like mushroom powders and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, all of the components have their medicinal properties.
So someone asked about the tuber and what its name was, and so they call it Indian breadroot, or wild turnip, or prairie turnip.
Yeah.
That's how he looks in the picture. All right, look, he's in the weeds.
Yeah.
All right. See, that's why I see my brother in the woods. All right. That's where we belong, in the woods.
That's right. And so the reason we put this photo in here is to show that we, just because we eat a lot of indigenous foods doesn't mean that we can't appreciate and utilize a lot of techniques from many other indigenous cultures as well. And so we actually eat a lot of Mongolian food in our family. We eat a lot of food from India in our family. We eat a lot of Korean food. Yeah. Food, food, the spice blends from India are beautiful medicine. We love Ethiopian food. And we incorporate a lot of those techniques and foods and spices into our diet all the time. So on the left there, we're actually harvesting perilla leaves. And if any of you have ever had that, it's a very important member of the mint family. And I gotta say, like, it's basically a traditional food, because Lakotas love their mints. They love their chayaka, right, bro? Mm-hmm. They make it as tea, they love their mints. So this is a member of the mint family. And if you look in the middle, we're actually preserving the perilla leaves. We put some chilies in there, some garlic and stuff like that. But we're doing sort of a salt preservation method, saltwater preservation method on that one. And then on the right-hand side, that's us looking super happy with our jar of kimchi. Luke's holding it like a baby. We love it. And both of those are lacto fermented, or that means fermented with salt. And and they're both beautiful medicines. So you can preserve all of this stuff in a really good way.
So back to our questions. Paul also makes a comment about the blood sugar levels with dried fruit, because the sugars in the fruit, even though they're natural, are condensed. So there's no question, just a comment. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I do, because so there have actually been really some beautiful studies done on stone fruits, like the chokecherries, like plums, like even apricots and peaches, and their use in actually stabilizing blood glucose, and specifically the stone fruits. So absolutely, we all need to watch out for our sugar intake. But even it's kind of crazy to think about. We think about, and I know I think I saw an Ojibwe friend on here, but we think that maple syrup and maple sugar it's just sugar, right? But they've done numerous studies to show that maple sap and maple sugar, maple syrup, real true maple products actually have a stabilizing effect on insulin, and a healing effect on the pancreas. So even though these products are sweet, in moderation and done in a good way, they can actually have a positive effect on our health, particularly of indigenous people.
So I think a lot to do with consuming the food within the matrix, right? Like the way when you dehydrate it, when you ferment it, or when you pickle it, it's a complete food. It's when we start breaking it up and squeezing the juice out, putting it in one container and taking the pulp out and putting it in another container. And then our vessels can't understand that language. It's like, why are you giving it to me in pieces? So it distorts our insulin production and all the other elements in our bodies that are meant to be in harmony, right?
Yes.
I really, I just want to stick this in there. I really love what you're doing, because it's so freeing. And what you said at the beginning is so powerful, that this is the ultimate act of rebellion. It's growing your own food, but you're taking us a step further in how to prepare it, how to keep it longer, how to store it through the winter, how to consume it in a healthy way, and even with the knowledge of how good each product is, for our own being. I think it's definitely the way we are meant to live, and it's a true meaning of food sovereignty. And so we have a right to eat what the earth grows for us. We have a right to what the earth grows, and we have a right to heal our bodies with what our spirit feels as medicine, with what our ancestors used as medicine. So I really want to thank you for doing this. Your beef, even though I'm not a really big beef eater, we have a similar tradition where we're mostly seafood people. We're tropical people. We grow bounty of food, but we think that because we don't have electricity or refrigeration and the space to store food, that we have to throw that food away. It just has to go away. So year after year, crop after crop, harvest after harvest, we have all of this wasted food. But what you are exposing here is giving us a reachable goal, like the ability to take all of this food and make something with it. Not necessarily to sell it, but we can store it for ourselves. And I absolutely love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, because food shouldn't just feed us physically. Like everyone talks about food security and how, we have to have enough calories. And absolutely, I more than most people understand that we have hungry people in the world, and that's criminal. But when we shouldn't just strive for food security. We shouldn't just strive to have enough calories. Food should feed us mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And if food doesn't feed your spirit, you're still going to be hungry. I see kids eating hot dogs and chips, and they're still hungry afterwards. And what I've come to realize is that they're not just physically hungry, they're spiritually and emotionally hungry. And when you give them instead a bowl of that, like dried meat soup, for example, or a bowl of one of the medicine soups we make, they're full. And it's because we put so much prayer and so much, like, we pray over the things that we grow and gather. And when you do that, it feeds people in a totally different way than if you just, open up a pack. And I mean, I understand we can have, I don't food shame anybody, because, people do what they have to do to eat. People do what they have to do to survive. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we can strive for better. We can strive for more. And we choose to reach for that goal of food sovereignty and food that feeds us as a complete person. So I really appreciate those words in you saying that.
We also really believe, like Linda was saying, that a part of the power of the food and the medicine that is in the food comes from the people who are making it. And when you're getting food produced from factories and stuff, you don't know what kind of energy those people are putting into that. And they might not be having a good day one day, and that would be the energy that you're taking in. And another thing, one of the things that Delwyn was saying earlier that kind of sparked something with me is that we also believe that, or we're also coming to believe that, a lot of what we've become to know as the culinary arts and how food should be cooked is they give you the essence of the medicine and not the whole medicine. So part of it is actually leaving all that stuff in there and consuming it, because you have to take the whole medicine into you in order for it to do the best work for you.
Yes. Yeah. I do love what you said about that, because nothing is more frustrating than watching my friends with their juicing machines, and they drink the juice and then literally throw out a huge clump of the actual food. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the fiber in there, that they're just throwing out. It's so frustrating, because it's such a waste of food, and it's a waste of good food, So I like we always say, there's no spirit left in a Twinkie, it's been cooked all out of that Twinkie. There's no spirit left. But there's spirit in the orange, and when you eat that, you take all of that into your body. We even use the orange peels, by the way. We don't eat them directly, but we use orange peels. We throw those into our fire cider, so you don't have to.
I'm gonna send you our candy. We make candy with the orange peel.
Woo, yeah, we just
love
not speaking. We just now created res candy. So we're getting resi up in here. As the res turns, we're getting real articulate.
So someone here also asks to share a recipe of your soup, which I think is bringing us to the next part, if we still have time, because we can listen to you for hours.
Right,
So
yes.
I'm
Medicine
gonna put
soup.
up the show.
Medicine soup, woo, coming to you.
It does
Yay.
need to be a song, bro. Well, so we won't go through this whole thing because we could do a whole nother hour on medicine soup for you guys. But I do want to share like our recipe, like a basic recipe for medicine soup. And a good medicine soup always starts with bone broth, not just
That's
stock.
Luca's best thing right there. Woo,
Yes,
bone. It's all
yes,
about
it
the
is.
bones. It's all about the bones.
Not just beef stock or stock, not just broth, but bone broth. It is the stuff. And my husband makes it.
So when you get the bones, whether it's a pheasant carcass, chicken carcass, it's pork bones, beef bones, buffalo bones, turkey. When we get done cooking a turkey or a chicken, roasting one, we throw the whole carcass into a big pot. We throw a bunch of different herbs in there, some salt, and we just cook it for a long time. And then we have this wonderful, wonderful base for anything that we make after that.
Yeah. So like if you roast a turkey, like for a holiday or whatever, like we eat turkey all the time. We love it. But don't ever throw that carcass out. Throw that into a stock pot, and then you throw the medicines in there, and what we say is you just boil the hell out of it. Like you go from 12 cups of water to basically to 6 cups. So you're going to reduce it by half and super slow over 6 to 8 hours.
And what you're getting out of there, I mean, you're getting a lot. You're getting flavor from the different. If you're putting carrots in there and bay leaves and things like that, you're getting medicine from that. But you're getting these fats and collagens from the bones themselves, and that's what's really gonna help you.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the foundation. So when we make medicine soup, we actually do it in 3 layers. We always say there's 3 layers of medicine possible for medicine soup. And the first layer is your bone broth, your base. And then from there, you can kind of just slowly go through these slides, sis, toggle through them. Yeah. You have all your spice options that you can add. If you want to make something that tastes more like a Vietnamese pho, which we love, you can add things like cinnamon and star anise and clove and even some ginger and bear root.
And the thing about these things is all of these spices, they have components to them that will help you fight bacteria and other microbes.
Yeah, what you see on that slide, we actually and these even here, these other herbs that are so easy to find in the grocery store, even
or to
grow yourselves. Even in North Dakota, we grow tons of rosemary, oregano, and thyme. Our friends send us bay leaves from California. All of these are super antiviral and super antibacterial, and they're anti-inflammatory. So medicine soup is wonderful if you have arthritis or any sort of inflammatory issue. Keep going. And then, another thing we love to put in are any of the alliums or garlic and onions, shallots, leeks. Those are wild onions in the top center there, the ramps. We love those. And we put tons of those in our soups. Keep going.
And I mean, you can start out small. You don't have to start out putting, we end up putting probably like a whole bulb of garlic and a couple onions in our things. You don't have to go to that extreme. That we like those flavors. If you have a problem with any of the flavors, just start out small, Yes.
When my husband was growing up, we always tease because when he was growing up, his literally in his family, they would make a soup with meat, potatoes, and salt.
Well, my mom actually got mad at me. We also put Worcestershire sauce in there. She said that's where all the flavor came from.
That was her medicine for the soup, is the Worcestershire sauce. but okay. He's like, that's red soup right there. Red soup, ain't it, bro? So
I had that soup a couple times.
I know.
That's good too, huh?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I ain't complaining. I'm not complaining. I was hungry, so.
Well, and so what we say is that, like, if that's what you're used to, if you're used to things that are kind of simple and maybe a little bland, you can slowly just add a little bit of garlic, a couple cloves, add a little bit of onion over time. Don't pressure yourself. Make things as simple as possible. We add tons of mushrooms to our soups. My husband hates mushrooms, but what we do is we powder them. And we powder our chaga, we powder our reishi mushroom that you see there, we powder our turkey tail, any of those, and we put a couple spoonfuls into our soup, and it just sort of blends in there, and he can't even taste them, I promise you. We put all different kinds of greens options. Like I said earlier, we were talking about the greens. We have the milkweed there. We have our dried kale and cabbage. We have our stinging nettles in the middle. Any kinds of greens.
And so legumes. You can put all kinds of legumes. This is just a great protein that you can add to your soup, especially if you don't eat a lot of meat. This is a great way to get your protein. And if you don't eat meat, beans, and then the nettles on the last page, those are great to put in there, and they will give you a great source of protein.
Tons of protein in nettles, yeah, and tons of proteins in beans, any kind of rice, grains, and tubers, but try to stay away from yellow sweet corn. Canned sweet corn actually has a ton of simple sugar. It's terrible for anyone who's diabetic. It's terrible for people who might have issues with their blood sugar. Stay away from the yellow sweet corn.
One cob of yellow sweet corn has more sugar in it than a Snickers bar. Yes. So if you think you're having the healthy option and you're eating the sweet corn, you're not. You might as well go have a Snickers. It's better for you.
Yes, yeah. At least there's peanuts in the Snickers bar. So there are complex carbohydrates. So that's key. Complex carbohydrates. Okay, that means they burn slow and they don't raise your blood sugar really high. So avoid what we call white foods. That's not to offend anybody, but we always say white ain't right. Avoid the white rice, avoid the white potatoes, avoid the white sugar, avoid the noodles, the anything made from white flour, avoid those, and go for things that are colorful. We have some beets there, we have some popped amaranth, Indian corn, these traditional varieties of corn that everyone is growing, wild rice, the tipsila. These will fill you up, but it's a slow burn, so they won't raise your blood sugar. And of course, so what we said, I told you that that our medicine soup is 3 layers. We start off with that beautiful bone broth, and then we add our components that actually have bite to them, like the beans, like the greens, like the complex carbohydrates.
The meat is an important aspect right now.
And the dried meat or any kind of meat.
You're gonna have to come cook for us.
We're
gonna be in the Black Elk. You're gonna have to come cook for us now.
I have a question now. But we're going further away. The milkweed, is that what we call pleurisy root? Is that the same one?
They're in the same genus, so they're related to each other. But a lot of species of milkweed are not very tasty. So that's what we call the showy milkweed in English. It's Asclepias sericea, right. And it just gets really big and showy. But the pleurisy root is related. It's basically a sister plant.
And the showy milkweed is also a great one to plant in your gardens, because that is the main food source for monarch butterflies.
And it's a butterfly bush,
yeah. Yes. And so if you plant that, not only can you eat it, but you can also help the butterflies.
And the other pollinators as well. When we're making medicine soup, we think of it as those 3 layers: the bone broth, the components in there like the meat and the beans and the the onions and things like that. But then we also put toppings on our soup. We love the hot of the soup and a little bit of like cool toppings, cool and crunchy toppings on top. And so we put like mint on top. We put all different kinds of basils and even bee balm, which is a wonderful traditional Lakota medicine. We put sprouts on top. We, all kinds of stuff. Fresh radishes, jalapenos, all different other kinds of chilies, cilantro, parsley, yeah, and even fermented toppings like kimchi.
Yeah. So again, we'll go back to what we were talking about earlier. If you're putting these fresh things on there, you're stepping away from a lot of what the culinary art says is what a meal should look like, right? But if you look at a lot of traditional soups and foods from around the world, you'll see that fresh components are a big part of it. We talked earlier about the pho soup from Vietnam. They put fresh components right on top. You look at pozole from down in the south. They're putting fresh cabbage and fresh cilantro and lime and chilies and radish in there, and it just gives you another aspect within your umami aspect within your mouth.
Savory, yeah. And so this is basically what we call our strong heart soup. This is a soup that we make for people who have had a heart attack, or have had maybe some angina, or have been diagnosed with high blood pressure, or we try to catch it early, right? People who have been diagnosed with high cholesterol or whatever. This is a fantastic soup for heart health. So if you have high blood pressure, this really is the soup for you. So yeah, and I mean, you can also take your phone and take a picture of that if you want the recipe, but a lot of you are doing this anyway. Like for us, even if we make chili, like a bowl of chili, it doesn't matter where you're from and whether you put beans in it or not. I know people argue over what's chili and what's not, but you can put medicine into your chili. And yes, of course, like the beans and the tomatoes and the garlic and stuff, the spices that are in chili are all medicine. But why not put a couple spoonfuls of mushroom powder into your chili? No one will know it's in there. And why not top your chili with all kinds of beautiful, fresh, fantastic things as well? So yeah, so that was a really quick.
Yes, thank you so much. Any more questions?
Yeah, the sister that said she had no power. I wanted to ask you a question. Do you have sugar cane around, or just cane itself, or bamboo in itself?
Oh, you're talking about what I mentioned about the cost of electricity for dehydrating?
Well, no, you said that y'all have to throw away a lot of food because y'all have no electricity and
Oh,
refrigerator.
We used to.
Oh, I thought you were saying you still don't.
Well, no, this is exactly, it's happening right now. We're in the food sovereignty part of our entire nation building process. And so we just.
I grew up preserving foods, and it's not just a regular root cellar, but it's a traditional native refrigerator for us Cheyennes. We would dig a hole and we would line it with salt, because once salt pulls the moisture out, it stays at a certain cool temperature. And we would make mud tubes, and we would line around the mud tubes with salt. And you want to get it at least a foot below, however deep you need to go for your food cellar. And you want to, if just say 6 foot, so you would make 6 foot mud tubes, or if you have bamboo or cane, you could use those and knock them out and make them tubes, and line the sides of it. It doesn't have to be very thick, but at least an inch thick of bamboo or cane, and put salt in there. And then once you cover it back up through the top, it will actually stay around 42 degrees.
We have bamboo and we have sugar cane. And you need to come down here and work with us.
Oh God, yeah, we're coming.
Native law.
I'm gonna get them all. Passport, whatever. How we gotta go down there.
We have a lot of traditional ways to pull water out. You can pull fresh water out of the air. I grew up taking the stomach of animals and burying it in the ground, and using different barks and rocks and putting it on top of the stomach where the hole is. And it works the same as a condenser on a refrigerator. The wind blows across the top of the rock, and the bark gets hot from the sun. So the rock will actually draw fresh water out of the air and drop it into the stomach, and you have fresh water.
Wow. We're super into all different. Oh, sorry, sis.
No.
No, it's something that the fishermen use with fish guts, with certain fish. I don't know the art of it, but it's something that I remember hearing with the old people. Would love to
Oh.
bring
That's so
that back
cool.
for
It's
value.
dried, it's dried to where you can drink out of it. And it's not wet. There's nothing wet in the whole entire process. It's all dry. It's just the ground stays at a certain temperature. So that bag is really cool compared to the outside. You take bark and you put it inside there into the funnel, and you got to take the rock and cover a good portion of the hole. And then you take another piece of bark and you put it on there. And that top bark is heating up the top half of that rock. But the coldness from the bag, excuse me, the bag in the ground is keeping the bottom half of the rock cold. So within an hour, you could feel that stomach or kidney or whatever you want to use to make a bag out of. But it has to be something dry, you know, something to pour
That's cool.
moisture off the air, and it
Yeah,
will condense water into that bag.
we're really into, like, I love what you were saying about the refrigeration below ground, because we're really into like different kinds of food caches, food preservation techniques. We actually we're trying to investigate different kinds of food caches and caching, and the tribes up here all would put certain plants into the caches and line the cache with certain plants to keep the bugs and the mice out and things like that. And it's just such a cool technology.
The salt lining the outside of your cache pot with salt will keep bugs and rodents, and it'll keep a lot of things from coming and bugging your food.
That's so
But,
cool. Yeah.
I have a quick question for Linda and Luke, if we still have a few minutes left. I've been a big fan of your work, following your page, and I just wanted to ask you to maybe briefly share about your efforts currently. I know you've been helping many people during the COVID phase, and if you could just, it's really inspiring, and also inspired a lot of work here on our end also. So if you could just maybe share and mention if there's anything we can support with.
So what we've been doing is, in the first PowerPoint we was about the food kits, and one of the first pictures you saw some of the kits we made, and we had a lot of elders at that time who were at the beginning of, well, about a year ago, who became afraid to go to the store. They didn't know what was going to happen. Food was disappearing from the store and becoming kind of hard to find, especially in the areas that we lived in, where we live, it's kind of rural, you know. And so what we were doing originally with our kids was trying to give people enough food so they could quarantine for a month if they had to. And just so that they had something, because what it really started with was Linda and I had started, we've taken and put beans and rice, which are, if you put beans and rice together, you actually have a complete protein and carbohydrate mix that can sustain you for a long time. And we've been putting beans and rice into Mylar bags, and then putting the little, you've seen the little packets that come in all the food. You can actually buy those and put them in there, and they will suck all the oxygen out of that. And if you put beans and rice in an oxygen-free environment, you can actually store them up to 30 years. And so we had started doing that for ourselves and creating preserves for ourselves, just in case anything happens. Because a lot of what we see is that there are places in the world where one day they have all the modern technologies, cell phones, computers, going to the grocery store with the refrigerator and getting anything that you want to eat. And then just like that, things can change, whether it's, you know, a natural disaster, or, you know, some governments are doing something, or just bad people doing whatever. Your life can change very quickly, and you can have, you have to be prepared for that. A part of Indigenous culture, the culture that I grew up in, is we think 7 generations into the future. And so, and I think that a lot of people around the world have had that over the years and have kind of lost that. And we need to start thinking about the future and able to preserve ourselves beyond just the now, you know, being able to do that. And so when we started making our kits, we were hoping that we could make elders feel more secure in this crazy world that we were living in. And so we were giving them these kits that would be able to sustain them for at least 1 month.
Yeah. And they're huge. Like we give these huge, big totes to the elders, and we tried to make them as traditional but shelf stable as possible. We didn't want them to have to worry about fitting stuff into their fridge. We also live in a pretty energy insecure area where the power will randomly go out here for a day at a time, and so we put things in there like wild rice, dried squash. We put beans in there. We put dried meat into our kits. We've been putting dried fruit, dried vegetables, and freeze dried. We love freeze dried stuff. And we actually had a freeze dryer donated it to us. So we're going to be freeze drying a lot of things more. So we've been putting freeze dried fruit and veggies in there. We've been putting dried nuts. We've been putting, we believe, I used to be one of those people who was kind of mean about food sovereignty. And I'd be like, fry bread is the food of the oppressor. Down with fry bread, and I really shut down a lot of people that way, because people love fry bread and they have very good feelings about it. And so I calmed myself down as I've gotten older, and I'm like, okay, if you're going to make fry bread, use organic flour that's not bleached. Take it a step further and use some of that flour. Also add some acorn flour or some coconut flour, or some good traditional alternative flour. Some cattail flour. I try to teach them how to do that into your fry bread. If you're going to do that, experiment with some stuff. So we did put organic flour into these kits because the elders were asking for it. We've been putting maple syrup, maple sugar, all of this stuff has come from indigenous producers. So not only have we been supporting the elders, but we've been supporting a lot of our friends who are growers, who are fishers and foragers with these kits as well.
And also trying to be as local as possible, and our idea of local is a little different than most people, because we travel a lot. So local is a few states away for us too.
Look, that's my daughter Cassie right there, guys. That's your relative right there.
Oh,
hi, Cassie.
Cassie Phoenix. That's my mini Darwin.
Awesome.
And then another thing that we're putting in there is also vitamin supplements, because especially because of the latitude that we live at, in the wintertime we don't get a lot of sunshine, so we don't get a lot of vitamin D. So we're putting vitamin D. It was also a good it's been reported to help with the fight against COVID. We're putting
we put vitamin D3, we put in zinc, and we put in vitamin C. All of those have been helping people fight COVID. Hi.
Good night. Good night. All right,
awesome.
Good night.
I can't even remember all of the amazing stuff, but it's right now. But what am I missing? I feel I'm missing some like really essential stuff. Oh yeah, we've been putting coffee that was like from a producer, a cooperative of Mayan women, like who directly they grow it, they process it themselves, harvest it, and then they send it to a roaster in Minneapolis. And that coffee is so unbelievable. And the elders, like we've had elders contact us and say, well, we still have plenty of the other stuff left, but can you bring us a bag of coffee? Because they love it. And just tons of other stuff that friends have sent us. And we've been really lucky, like really super blessed to get all of these different products from people, different amazing foods. And we've been giving them to elders, and they're our way of promoting food sovereignty and promoting traditional foods. But it's also our way of sharing food and feeding people and teaching people that, food security is not enough. We really need to take it a step further and think about food sovereignty. So I really appreciate you all having us on here today. It's been so super fun. Like really, this is probably the most fun webinar we've been on in a long time. And, just so great to be on here.
Thank you so much for your wonderful work.
Awesome.
Well,
That's
we we've had such a good time. I'm getting a little nervous because even my phone is about to die. But
Oh shoot! Well, let me. Well, please share my experience. Reach out to me because we got lots to discuss with Olga and everybody here, because we got so many things in the works. We're doing some gardens. We're doing just a lot of different projects that we want to bring on Sharon Rescue Tribe, the nations, but not just there, but throughout the nations, and travel abroad to nation to nation and build it, but also bring that medicine to each nation. So I know there'll
we're
always.
there. We're there, bro.
So,
Really, just let us know. We're totally there.
okay, I'll send you the dates then, because I get a
Okay.
whole plan. I already get all planned already. So thank you for the medicine soup, and we'll talk about the medicine, the book, the video, the chat. We're going to the podcast, everything. So, and to that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again, Arzu, my sister from way down south. I thank you. One day we're all going to visit you. Thank you, brothers, sisters. That will conclude our episode tonight. And again, safe travels.
Doksha.
Oh, Adakia
Ah.
say, Doksha.
Doksha, okay.
Oh.